Welcome back for another installment of Fellowship of the Rink, episode 58. Filling in for Scott here today, you should join me alongside your regular host here, Joe Smith of The Athletic, as always, bringing you all the inside info on your Minnesota Wild and, well, was Gophers hockey. Joe, how's it going?
Good. How would you classify Scott's injury? Upper body, or I think that's
Upper body.
It went from day to day to week apparently here. I thought he'd be back by now, but
upper body injury. The man can't speak, so filling in with an extra voice here on the bench is the producer of the show. You guys get to see my beautiful face here if you're watching on YouTube. But filling in for Scott here. We still have a great show here planned for you guys today. But I was just talking to Joe off air here, asking about how your week's going. I mean, it seems like overall in Wild Nation a lot of positivity. But how you doing the start of this week?
Good. My mom's in town for her first visit to Minnesota, and so she gets some grandma time with our son and stuff. And it's been, my birthday was on Friday, and it was 70 degrees, so like that was a really big bonus for me. But yeah, no, it's good. Like I think we're getting busy and ramping up for potential playoffs here in the Frozen Four, which I'll be attending. So a lot of things going on, and this road trip is a critical one for the Wild, and so we can know a lot more about where they're standing at after this week. But yeah, I am healthy for now, knock on wood, and we'll see if we can keep this thing rolling.
Yeah, well, speaking of the roster and guys getting better and good health in general, it seems like everybody's coming back here in a big way. Kirill, Kaprizov, Eriksson joining the team on the road trip, but perhaps not suiting up for at least the first couple games. I mean, let's talk about Kirill Kaprizov, Joel Eriksson and of course Jonas Brodin joining back with this team.
And obviously, Brodin came back a few games ago, and it's looked great for the most part. You could tell a big difference when he's there, not just when he plays, but how he slots everybody else. Faber doesn't have to play every high leverage situation minute, and he doesn't have to play 29; he can play 24, which is important, I think. But so that was the first big piece, and then now he started to see last week Kaprizov and Eriksson skating with the team, out there. So I think the way watching them, you look like they never left. Like they're just, Kaprizov is just grinding away, and his edges are great. Like his shots there. Like he's one of those guys where he's been working his butt off in the gym, ever since. So this week they're on the road trip. Kirill's going to see his surgeon, who's based out of New York, and get a better feel for the timeline, like whether it's a clearance to do contact or whatnot. But it's our belief that at the very least you'll see these guys next homestand, the last homestand of 2 games, but there's a Dallas game on Sunday, and then Wednesday they play San Jose. And so I would think they're not expected to play on this road trip, the 3 games in the New York area, but you want to get them some games before the playoffs. Might need them to make the playoffs. So I think overall encouraging signings you can have with no setbacks yet for them to be skating and pushing and angling to get back.
Well, I'm glad that you said that Ek and Kaprizov at practice anyways look as good as new. I've noticed Brodin has been that way in games. I mean, talk about that Washington Capitals and Minnesota game. Just an incredible game overall. I may have been, I was wearing green and beige there, I will say, much like this Waggle golf hat, but I have to say I was very much cheering for for the Minnesota boy in net and obviously Ovi to at least score 1. But getting back to Brodin, like, you said it. Faber, it seemed like there's a little bit of a weight off his back there, being able to get some more favorable matchups, and Brodin just looked like he hasn't lost a step at all. So encouraging to hear that, at least during practice, during drills, that Kirill and Ek look the same, because I for one am in the camp of don't bring them back early and rush them, especially because you don't want the injuries to get worse. But also, if they're going to come back, like, this team has been treading water enough where they, knock on wood, should still make the playoffs, and the Wild need them once they get there.
They do, and I think it's a hard balance, because guys like Kaprizov have said that they want to have a runway. They want to have some games before the playoffs. Like a couple of years ago when he came back for the play, I think he played 2 games down the stretch. Kirill did. They sat him for 2 of the last 4 games, and he said he didn't really feel right there during that Dallas series. And like, obviously he has to be cleared first and he has to feel right first, but I think no one is expecting them, as good as they look in practice and the skating, no one's expecting them to come up and just start lighting it up. And I think we saw it 2 years ago in Dallas where I watched Eriksson skate for like a few weeks, and he was doing everything he could and looked like great. And the first faceoff he took in that series, and he was out, because that broken leg he came back from, he couldn't do it. So, but I think, for them, it's been a long wait, and the team, I don't think, as much as they've treaded water and valiantly found a way to win games, it'd be hard pressed to see them win a playoff series without those 2 guys at, for the most part, full strength. I guess the hope for the Wild fans and brass is that they get a few games before the end of the regular season.
Would you say like at worst 2 is what you think they need?
Well, like,
because like the clock's ticking, right? For it all, for the timelines to work out.
Yeah, I mean, if they play, let's say they play San Jose, right, and then they play. It's hard to imagine them playing both back-to-back games in Calgary and Vancouver, right? So you do one of those, and you play on the finale against the Ducks, so you'll have some break in between that and the playoffs. So
some good tune-up teams too. So
yeah, like they just need to get some game action. Like there's no practices for this team, so they're just doing glorified morning skates or skates with Danny Ness, and so there's no way that can replicate anything close to it. So they need to get some sort of game action, I think, for them to feel a little bit right going into the playoffs. So I guess their hope is that this trip goes well, that they can kind of, even though St. Louis might catch them for that wild card spot, the top wild card spot, that they'll at least be enough ahead of Calgary and Vancouver and not worry about it.
Yeah, for sure. So once everyone's back and healthy, what can we expect the lines to look at? Because this will be another shakeup. I know since the big dogs have been gone, we've kind of seen how the lines have settled in for the most part in this little stretch of the season. Mm-hmm. But how should they be formed once everyone's healthy?
Well, I mean, you'd think that the top line could return again to, you could do Rossi, Zuccarello, Kaprizov, and then you get a Boldy, Eriksson, and I guess you would say like Johansson on that wing, or depending on who's hot at the moment. Like Foligno is playing top line tonight, I think. So like all variable. I think the question for me is kind of who comes out when those guys come back, and I think Devin Shore is as well as he's played or found a way in the 4th line there. I think he comes out, and possibly Brazeau comes out. Like you're looking at, Hinostroza is the other guy that was off waivers a while back. He's played well enough to earn top power play time and up the lineup. So, I guess of those 3, 2 of them would come out, because you're not taking Johansson or Gaudreau or Hartman or, even Trenton's probably still going to be in there. I mean, the theory they signed him for, he's built for this time of year in playoffs. So I think that for me, that's kind of who comes out versus like the lines could look a lot different depending on how they could put, they could put Kaprizov, Rossi or Kaprizov, that can Boldy again. They could whatever kind of machinations they can do. But clearly they'll have some challenges ahead of who comes out, because, you're not going to bring up, you can take Nyquist out of the lineup, even though he hasn't produced up to where people expected him to get once at the deadline. So yeah, I think the Lions could be a hodgepodge until they come back, but I think overall the key question is who comes out, and those are my kind of guesses of those 2 guys.
Well, at least more offensive guys are coming back in, which means that 3rd line will be constructed of guys who've been put and forced into more of an offensive role, or leaned on anyways this year. Even the likes of Foligno, who we know what he is, right? He's power forward type player, one of the last few in the league, but like they've had to lean on him for some offense, even just the little things with, the big dogs gone. So, I mean, the 3rd line could be like one of the most dangerous lines, again, towards the end of the season going into the playoffs. Again, assuming they get the good matchups there with, Hartman, with, a Nyquist, with Foligno, however, whoever the third man.
Could be Hartman, Nyquist, Foligno, or could be Hartman, Hinestroza, Foligno.
Yeah, and then Gaudreau on the fourth line. Gaudreau's been outstanding this season. Honestly, he's been one of my favorite guys to watch. Been
a great bounce back year
consistent. For him. Yeah, and just so surprise, surprise. When he's not hurt, he's a consistent bottom six guy. No wonder Dino loved him so much.
And you could have a Gaudreau, Trenyan, and Hinestroza maybe in the fourth line. I don't know.
That's a tough matchup for anybody else's bottom six. That's a tough matchup.
So that would be if you think about it that way, that could be an option. So clearly they're getting to get more speed back in the lineup. They were getting a little bit slower, I thought, toward the end of the year with the kind of the additions that they made and things that were going on. But clearly that's a problem that Hines would love to have if they have all those guys to pick and choose from and see what happens. And sometimes injuries make these decisions for everybody, right? Where who's going to be in there.
Better to have depth than these problems, like you said, than not, because once you get into the playoffs, the injuries are going to come, and some guys can play through them, and some guys are going to need a game or two. And if you have the roster where guys are capable to come and tag in, I mean that's how championship teams are made. Speaking of tough matchups, though, let's just quickly touch on that Washington Capitals and Minnesota Wild game. Like I said, it was just a great game overall. The Gus bus in full effect there. He had an unbelievable game. And again, talking about depth players, these guys stepped up to take down a surprisingly, and I say this throughout the whole season, I've said this all year, a Capitals team which plays such a sound game, and pure class by Ovechkin, who didn't score, close on a couple rebounds, who didn't score, and I think at one point had a shift that was like 3.5 minutes. I think he had 2 shifts in the first 2 periods that were 3.5 minutes. Then once I think the team was okay, we really need to win this game. We can't just lean on you to be out there just hanging out in the center zone. But just speak on, the class of Ovechkin there and just that moment when you were watching it. Because, I was still in the arena and obviously, we were clapping. Everyone was cheering and we all took that moment in live. But for you covering it and just, watching it as well, I think the listeners would want to hear your reaction to it.
Yeah, I think Russo and I were in the press box. We were getting ready to pack up and go downstairs for the interviews. And all of a sudden you see Ovechkin just pointing at the bench and the motions just stick. And you're like, what's going on here? It's not normal. And then he's motioning down the tunnel, and then once you saw I think Fleury skate out there, you're like, okay, we've seen this before a little bit. Montreal was that emotional night when Fleury played and was the incredible ovation, and then obviously the handshake after that one was the most memorable one of the season. But this was clearly something that meant a lot to both. I think Ovechkin told his team before that morning skate they want to do something like this. He was bummed that Fleury wasn't starting. This was maybe the last chance to get to play against each other after how many countless matchups in regular season and playoffs, game sevens, they played against each other over the years. So clearly he has a lot of respect for Fleury, and it showed there. And a cool moment for him and for Fleury. And it says a lot about hockey and hockey culture and the recognition in the spot. They lost the game. Clearly is not the big end of the world for them, but that'd be the first thought is to get the guys out there. And, Fleury said it felt kind of weird. It was he didn't play and he was ready to leave. Yeah. And then they're bring him up, but he was just classy thing. And I talked to him and we had that insider call, me and Russo did. I talked to Fleury about the relationship with Ovechkin over the years and the battles and all that stuff. And so that was a kind of fitting end to that quote unquote love-hate relationship between the two because of the rivalry over the course of the years. And in Fleury, I don't know how many games he's going to get in the last 10, right? Maybe the back-to-back game in Calgary and Vancouver, but they've been riding Gustafsson the whole time and points at a premium. So it's kind of a little bit of an awkward thing for his swan song of not knowing when he'll play next. Or maybe you think you get maybe if they have that last playoff spot sewed up by the season finale against the Ducks, you think he might play that one since if the playoffs start, and I think they're probably going to ride Gustafsson and not going to go back and forth like they did a couple years ago.
No, yeah, for sure. Just picturing that again. When we were there, we saw the same thing. Fleury skate out, and I was like, wait, what's going on here? Fleury didn't even play, and then then it kind of we all realized what was going on, and like Ovechkin, what a class act there. It just got me thinking when you were talking about that, like. Imagine when him and like Crosby have their final like handshake on the ice, like how chilling of a moment that's going to be for the hockey world, right?
Yeah, and they've probably already had that, right?
Well, this season, I just feel like because like Ovi said he's only probably playing one more year.
Ovi and Sid,
Sorry, Ovi and Sid. That's going to be like whoever captures that picture, like that's going to be one that goes, is hung in the Hockey Hall of Fame probably.
Yeah, I think there's been like talk or like about they should just waive the 5-year rule for like Hall of Fame and just put them in right away. Put them in together and stuff. Just because of how fitting it would be. But yeah, I mean, who knows how long that'll be away. I mean, I think
actually no, sorry, I have to interject. McGillney has to get in before them, right? I mean, come on.
Well, that's an argument for another day, another podcast. But yeah, I mean, I think McGillney is deserving. But
that's just tongue in cheek for the hardcores because it's just eye rolling like, another year and McGillney not getting it.
Yeah, we do that exercise every year in the Athletic where we each pick a player to like make your case for, because we talk to people on the committee, whether it was Scotty Bowman or whoever else, and what it's like to make your pitch. It has to get whittle down the votes, get to pass the first ballot, then it gets a second ballot and stuff. So I would like to think he gets in eventually.
Someday.
But I've been the Baseball Hall of Fame voter for 10 plus years and still puzzled me some guys that don't or do get in.
Yeah, no, for sure. Let's quickly switch gears and talk about Zeev Buium, seemingly a lock to come over to the Wild. Once his tournament's done. I mean, Brusso's leading us to believe that with his tweets. I'm sure you think the same. So if/when he comes over, how many games do you believe we will even see him in a Wild sweater this year, whether it's season or maybe even playoffs?
Loyal SodaPod listeners, if you're in the South Metro or just need to explore some new breweries, head to Bloomington's first and only tap room, 9 Mile Brewing. Some of my favorite beers on tap right now are Current Obsession, 9 Mile's flagship New England IPA, and Harness the Dark, their Imperial Rye Porter aged in J. Carver rye whiskey barrels, brewed in collaboration with J. Carver for their 3rd anniversary party just this last month. 9 Mile will be hosting bingo every Thursday with 2 blackout games starting at $500 and one progressing up to as much as $1,000.
Well, I mean, since he's in the Frozen Four and they play on the 10th, right? So you're probably looking at, if they lose that first game, he probably only might be able to get in that season finale against the Ducks, right? And that's probably if the Wild have clinched a playoff spot or the 8th or 7th spot, then they might give him a chance to come in. For that, I think he's a guy who can play at this level and play now. Just a matter of if the coaches are gonna be ready to throw him in right to game 1 of a playoff series, right?
It's like a confidence and trust thing from coaches who've like been riding and dying with their guys all season.
Yeah, no, it's like, and people like to hate John Merrill, and and I know he has his flaws as a player and everything like that, and he's a 6th defenseman, whichever, but the coaches trust him. He plays in the PK, and he has a body of work that they believe in, and I think Zeev obviously has a lot higher upside than most guys right now in that group, but it'll be a question of whether they're ready to. I remember a couple of years ago, Brock Faber got a chance to play in some games that they already had their spot locked up in the standings, and he could play against Chicago, another team, and then kind of prove to coaches like, oh, we believe this guy, we could trust this guy. He played like 13 minutes or whatever. So it's a different scenario than this year. But just watching
he had some time to marinate,
and watching him Zeev in the playoffs, like, holy cow, how much confidence does he have of the puck? And like, you almost want to say like, do 11 and 7 and have him play the power play, and then have play some maybe sheltered minutes. I don't know if it's hard to do that in a playoff situation, but my God, like that guy is just so electric with the puck, and you watch the power play for the Wild and like, what are they doing sometimes? And like a guy who can make things happen. So they'll be very, very interesting to me. And I'll be at the Frozen Four covering that, covering DU, covering Zeev, and the rest of the Final Four draw there. So I'll be interested to see how that plays out. And then probably like Brock Faber, once he's done the next day.
Oh yeah,
on a plane, and so he'll at least, I would imagine, the last game of the season, if it, indeed it's not, you're not playing it to make the playoffs that one game.
Yeah, some tenacity too. I saw like a little potential scary collision knee on knee in one of the games, and then comes right back out and throws a huge hit a couple shifts later, which was nice, which was good to see. And you just said, like, just oozes confidence out there. I mean, that first game though, it's always either they dominate because there's just like so much confidence and just on like cloud nine, or it's like, yep, I'm recognizing that there is a huge step up from, college and or, some of these junior guys who come over, major juniors. So I do think he's at that elite level where it's not going to take time, but a couple games is always better than one. Just like we were talking about earlier, guys coming off injury as well. You need to get some reps. It's just the game is so fast now, and
such a difference. Level. Such a difference from the college level, Yeah. And I think people are going to be surprised with how good he is defensively. I think he gets a lot of attention for offensive instincts and what he does with the puck and how he skates. But I think you don't get to play 30 minutes in World Juniors if you can't defend the top players in the world, right? He's lined up against the BC top players in that last semifinal game. And what did, Leonard and those guys do in that game? Not very much. So I think, he's proven at the levels he's at, he's been able to defend the top players at those levels. So I think that while he might not be that immediately shut down defender that Brock was when he came in, or after 30 games that Brock was, like, I think people will be pleasantly surprised to see how well he can defend. I
mean, you're familiar with, Quinn Hughes being the Michigan guy, and didn't strike everyone as a defensive guy, but look, logging, Faber minutes in Vancouver and still trying to keep that team alive, playing both an offensive and defensive game. Let's talk about Charlie Stramel. First of all, like, bounce back season. You and Scott have talked about it a lot on, and you guys have interviewed him on this season of the show. Just a few words on the season overall, and do you think he is going to go pro or come back for his senior year?
Well, he's definitely staying in Michigan State. We've confirmed that, but which makes sense. Like, he had a heck of a year, a bounce back, kind of a career rejuvenation, if you call that, for a 20-some-year-old kid. And he doubled his goals, same amount of goals he had this year than he had the previous 2 years at Wisconsin combined. Clearly found a coach, Nightingale, that believed in him and trusted him, and he was playing top line minutes. Obviously, he's playing with a Hobie Baker finalist and Isaac Howard, so that helped his point total, that helped his confidence. But clearly this was a huge season for him, and showing a lot of critics what he could do, showing the Wild what he's capable of, and just being the player that he knows he can be. Now, I think he made the decision of staying for another year, getting more of that development and being ready to come and play pro the following year. There really wasn't much room, I think, on the Wild roster at this point, and maybe his development might be better in Michigan State in that system and that coaching staff and everything like that than maybe in Iowa to jump for first year for a pro. Nothing against playing that staff, but the way he flourished at Michigan State, playing top line minutes, playing every single overtime situation, it's too good a situation not to pass up at going back again. And they're going to be playing, in theory, deep in the season as well with Michigan State again. So that was less of a conflict or question than seeing what Zeev or somebody might do at the end of the year.
Yeah, Zeev with obviously just the higher ceiling of a prospect overall, and it's not like they're dire for Charlie Stramel right now, given that the roster has a lot of depth, and let's continue to develop this guy so when he does come up, it's the best version of him and he's ready to go. Gabe Perreault, Joe.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of signing with NHL teams, signed with the New York Rangers and could potentially make his debut playing the Wild in a couple of days here. I know Scott's just like, he's screaming without his voice listening to this because I know he wants to talk about this. He loves, he loves these cheeky type of storylines, filled with Minnesota Wild lore. Do you think he makes his debut with the Rangers there? Because I know the Rangers, weird season for them. I don't know how much playing time he's, really going to get down the stretch here. But if he plays against the Minnesota Wild, how's your Twitter going to react? How's your Twitter following going to react? Your phone to be blown up?
Yeah, no, it's almost fitting, right? Some other teams passed on Gabe Perreault too, right? Clearly.
No, it was just the Wild. I think it was
just
the
Wild.
Wild.
The Wild passed on him 17 times, right?
Yeah.
So, and that's how he got there. But, I think the Stramel and Perreault discussion will go on for who knows how long. And I remember talking to Gabe at the Frozen Four. Was it last year before? Where he saw stuff on Twitter from Wild fans and whichever else like that. It's just part of the deal. But I do think he could play his debut on Wednesday at Madison Square Garden. It'd be cool to get him home game, first game. Him and Stramel are just different players with different timetables, and who knows? Gabe still has to show he can produce and play a top 6 role in the NHL level, right? So he's not a locked foregone conclusion that he's going to be a star, right? So, but I think it will be fun for Mayan and Russo's mentions on Wednesday and see what he can do. The Rangers had just a weird season to where it's wild that they're actually thinking about playing a rookie right now in this particular spot. So, but I guess that Scott would want to embrace the chaos, so let it happen. So
he's gonna have a field day on Twitter if that happens. So there you go. Well, let's bring on another Canadian to the show. Look at this, a very heavy Canadiana presence on the show here today. Now kind of settled in with the Minnesota Wild, newly acquired forward Justin Brazeau joining Joe and Scott here on the other side.
This interview is brought to you by our friends at Waggle Golf. Waggle Golf believes what you wear on the course should reflect your individuality, who you are, where you're from, your hobbies, interests, and passions. All the stuff that makes you, well, you. That's why every design is inspired by the desire to create a piece of apparel that strikes a chord when you see it. That makes you say, wow, that was made for me. Because in a lot of ways, it was. Ready to get your waggle on? Go to getyourwaggleon.com, throw in promo code SP10 at checkout to take 10% off your entire order.
Welcome back to the show, Fellowship of the Rink. Our guest today is one of the newest members of the Minnesota Wild, Justin Brazeau. Hello, thank you for joining us.
Yeah, no worries. Thanks for having me.
No problem. Just love your story, love your journey. I think, one of my favorite things about being a writer and covering teams and players is kind of all their unique paths to get where they are. And speaking of uniqueness off the ice, our podcast name is Fellowship of the Rink. So Lord of the Rings fan. I don't know if you are Lord of the Rings fan or not, but if not,
never watched it. No.
If not, what's your kind of nerd itch? What's your kind of off the ice thing? Like a movie series, book series, collect something. What's your kind of go-to thing?
Yeah. Movie series, I was definitely a big Marvel guy. Up until kind of Endgame and stuff like that. I was kind of the early Marvel stuff. I haven't watched a lot of the stuff lately. But definitely a big Marvel guy. And then I like the Transformers series a lot as well.
That was classic. As a kid, you probably had Transformers too, right? Or all those kind of stuff,
Yeah, I was definitely big into the movies and stuff. I never really had a ton of the action figures and stuff like that. But I was definitely a big movie guy. My dad's a big Marvel guy. He watches a lot of the Marvel stuff. That's the kind of movies he likes. So we'd always kind of go to those and go watch them in theaters and stuff like that.
Who are your hockey idols? Who are the guys who are the posters on your wall, I guess?
I had Ovechkin. So last night playing those guys is pretty cool. Him, as I kind of got a little older, Corey Perry kind of started to become somebody I watched a lot. He's from where I'm from, so I skated with him once when I was a really young kid. He came and did a hockey school for us, so I kind of really liked him. But yeah, I would say Ovechkin was definitely probably my biggest idol.
So getting the chance to go up against him, or do you say anything to him at all, or you get a chance at any point to
No, I didn't say too much, but it's definitely a pretty cool feeling. I remember. Obviously, I played him 3 times this year. We played him twice last year. But that first game last year against him, it was kind of that was the only guy really when I was playing, I was kind of in awe, oh, this is pretty cool.
You can tell you're kid someday, you block one of his shots or whatever
exactly.
like that. On your path to get here, Newfoundland was another one of your stops. Like, what was it like to play there? What was the kind of the feel?
It was awesome. That was maybe one of my favorite years of hockey I've ever played. The people out there are so nice. They love their hockey. But yeah, just like it's a different place to live. Like, I mean, the weather was crazy every 5 minutes. I was actually there. I don't know if it still is or but at the time, I think it was one of the biggest snowstorms that have ever happened out there. It was like 100+ mile an hour winds. I think we got like 2 feet of snow in 24 hours. It was crazy. Like, I was snowed into my apartment for 4 days in a row. So it was a cool place. It was a unique place. Obviously the travel was a lot, always flying in and out and busting around everywhere. But, we had a really good group and, I had a lot of fun out there.
How do you describe a Newfie or a person from Newfoundland?
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, they're a unique, like, I think the kind of like the East Coast, like Boston, like that, they have the accent. It's obviously a little different, but like if you talk to like a Newfie just on their own, they have a little accent. There's not too much, like you can't really tell too much, but it's when they get around each other, like when the locals get around each other and they start talking like the Newfie slang, and they go from being able to have a conversation with you and then you don't even understand what they're saying. Like half the time the slang is a little bit crazy out there.
And have you ever heard of Screeched In?
Yeah, I got Screeched In. Yeah, that was one of our things we did.
Yeah, I mean, I know people who listen to this probably don't know it, but I covered Tampa Bay Lightning before this, and John Cooper was a coach, and he took his team to Newfoundland and for a game. The whole team got Screeched In at a bar. Yeah. And how would you describe your experience of what that actually is and kind of why it's so unique? Yeah, we did the same thing. So when we first got out to Newfoundland, it was like not rookie thing, but like anybody who had never played in Newfoundland or got Screeched In, we went to a bar and they set it up for us. Basically, it's a shot of screech. You have to eat a bit of Newfoundland steak, which is like bologna, and then you got to kiss a fish. So you kind of do it like you do the bologna first, then you kiss the fish, then you do the shot, and they give you like a little certificate saying you're an honorary Newfoundlander. What fish do you have to kiss? Which one was it? Was it like a codfish? I don't know what it was, actually. It's okay. I'm actually not sure. I don't know what kind of fish it was, but it was definitely something I've never done before. There better be a photo there somewhere, all right? Everybody had to have photos taken. I think there might be a video of everybody doing it. Scoring goals is the hardest thing to do in this league and in any league, and you scored 60 in junior. Just like, how would you describe what that season was like? Like, is it just something you got on one of these rare heaters, or was it just kind of what every day was like? Everything felt like it was going in for you. Yeah, I think a little bit of both. I mean, I kind of was building up to it. I think the year before I had 40, and it was something that, my goal was going into the year 50. So I kind of had that, mindset of like, I know I can score in this league and I can play. But yeah, it was obviously just one of those years where kind of a lot of things went well. Obviously I was lucky to play with, good line mates, and I played a lot of minutes because we never really had necessarily the best team in the world. So I played a lot of minutes. Kind of was just like the right blend of everything. Coaches that, believed in me and let me kind of just play my game and do my thing. So yeah, that was a lot of fun that year, that season. And, just my whole 4 years up in North Bay, it was awesome. And from your vantage point back then, like, were you surprised you weren't drafted, or like, where was the kind of the feel of that at time? Yeah, I mean, the drafted thing, I don't think I was necessarily too surprised with. Obviously, I played my draft year was my first year in the OHL, and I think I had 12 points or whatever it was. So I ended up going to Detroit's camp, didn't get drafted, didn't really expect to get drafted. Like, I had never really heard of anything until kind of towards the end of the year, and I got on like one draft, like or something. The next year, I thought there was a slight chance. I think I had 20 goals my 18-year-old year, 40 points or something. So I thought there may have been a chance. And then I never got drafted. I never went to like a whatever they call it, development prospect camp, development camp. Yeah.
I ended up going to like the prospect tournament at the end of the year to like fill a roster. But so that was like the only year I kind of thought I was maybe going to get drafted. But no, I never really, like I said, I never really had expectations of the draft just because I knew I was kind of a little later getting going. And my third year in the OHL, I obviously had a good year. I went to San Jose's camp. I thought there was potentially a chance of something there. But then they told me to go back and just have a good year. And that year was kind of I thought I had earned, potentially an NHL contract at that point from what I had done. But obviously it didn't work out. And, I wouldn't change kind of how I got here at all, though.
And do you have is it especially gratifying considering the way you got here? Like, I think you talk to guys who played in the coast and stuff like that and kind of know what it's like to bounce around. Like, does it give you kind of that satisfaction of like, hey, this is how I got here?
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, it's, I don't think I would change anything about kind of how I got here. Obviously every road is different. But yeah, I think everything kind of leads towards where you get to. Like, I mean, I feel like I can handle not criticism, but the ebbs and flows of a season a little better now because I'm so used to, being down there, being up, being everywhere. But yeah, no, I definitely feel a kind of a sense of, accomplishment being able to stick with it for as long as I did. Obviously I had I played, I think 80 games down in the East Coast League. So I was, I stuck with it. I was sent down 2 different times. And then after, the COVID year in Toronto, I wasn't sure. I was honestly at that. So after my second year in Toronto, I had committed to the University of Toronto. And I was about a week away from I was starting to pick my courses and kind of figure out, where I was going to live down there and go to school. And then Providence called me kind of a week before I was kind of ready to go down and offered me a deal. And I knew I could play here. I knew I never lost that belief that I could make the NHL. But obviously it's tough when you kind of bouncing around down there and you're like, I don't know if I'll ever get my chance. So I knew I could play, and then Providence gave me the call and gave me a contract. And I said, what's one more year going to do? I'd already lost my OHL package at that point, and I would have had a red shirt for a year. So I decided to go with it. And obviously I'm pretty happy I did.
What were you going to study, or what was going to be your backup plan, or what would you think you would have done if you didn't?
Yeah, I was kind of going back and forth between like the business program there or kinesiology. I wasn't really sure. It was kind of like that weird year where we didn't finish up till a little bit later because we didn't start till like February or whatever it was. And then I kind of waited about a month or two to see if I'd get anything. And I'd gotten 2 other offers in the American League, but they were basically just ECHL offers. And I told my agent, I don't want to sign just a straight ECHL deal. So I was kind of I wasn't 100% sure. I just knew I was going to kind of get down to Toronto and figure it out from there. Basically, I was talking to the coach, he's like, just get down here and we'll figure it out. But yeah, it was probably between those 2.
And then when you got to Providence, obviously you took off from there. Like, was there a certain kind of turning point for you, or like a confidence building moment to where like you kind of knew that there was going to be no more kind of going down in that respect?
Yeah, I mean, I was lucky. The coaches in Providence were awesome for me. Ryan Mujno is somebody that, I owe a lot to in my career. Him and his assistants down there to be able to kind of stick with me and believe in me and trust in me was awesome. Obviously, when I first got to Prov, I probably wasn't in the best shape ready to play hockey because I honestly thought like that summer it was kind of like I'm not going to play hockey for the next year and a half because I couldn't play my first year at school. So I wasn't probably training as hard as a professional hockey player should be. So that's basically why I got sent down. And when I got called up, they basically just said like, play your game. We believe in you. And we know you guys, you be a good player here. So I owe a lot to them. I think that was the biggest thing for me. Just like, I remember even in Toronto, like my second year, I kind of like, I knew I could play, but I knew that maybe the situation I was in, they didn't quite see me sticking. So I think just that confidence from a coaching staff of like, I can go out and play my game. And if I make little mistakes, it's not going to be like I get back to the bench and I'm sent back down again. You know what I mean? Just that confidence of knowing that I'm going to get my next shift as long as I keep trying to work hard and do the best that I can. So I owe a lot to those guys down there.
What's the most vivid memory from the day of your NHL debut? Like, obviously the end result, we all know what happened. He's scoring a goal, but like, what was the overall emotions of the day, and kind of, was it a surprise? Did you kind of see it coming, and like, kind of how did that play out?
Yeah, no, that was one of the craziest weekends of my life. I mean, I think so. My debut was on a Monday in Boston. We had played the Friday night in Providence, and there was rumblings that like they were trying to shake some stuff up because I think they were struggling. Like they obviously had a good team, but their fourth line was kind of getting struggling a little bit. And I remember the Friday night there was, I think the whole front office from the Bruins was at the game. So I ended up playing pretty well. And then Saturday night because we were supposed to play on Sunday improv at like 3:00. And normally every night before a game, like the lineup will get sent out. And there'll be a schedule so guys know when to come in. Like basically they just put in like everybody show up to the rink ready to play. Like we're not sure what the lineup's going to be. So people were kind of like, that's something's off. Like something's a little weird. And I remember I showed up to the rink and I was kind of we're getting ready for the game in the shower. And like our coach, like Mujno came in and was just kind of like, hey, come see me in my office for 5 minutes. And I was like, oh, that's like weird. Cause at the like, I've got an American League contract. Like if anybody's going to get called up, I was like, it's not going to be me because I'd have to sign a deal. But he pulled me in and he basically just said like Sweens is coming down to they're going to offer you a contract. And I think the plan is to play tomorrow. So it was kind of one of those things where I signed my contract in the first and second period intermission in Providence. And then kind of halfway through the second period, I packed up my bag. I went in, popped my head in between the second intermission and said, good luck to them for the third period. And I headed up to Boston, went to a hotel and played the next morning at 1. So it's kind of crazy. And, the timing worked out really well. My sister had never been a prov in my 3 years that I was there. So she was on her reading week back home. So she flew in. I picked her up on the Saturday in Boston. And so she ended up being there already. So she was able to kind of watch my first game. My parents flew in. So it was a crazy weekend, but it was pretty special.
And like they have the goal too, right? Something you'll remember for the rest of your life.
Definitely a pretty cool moment.
And you feel like you kind of found your identity then at that point, like when you started to get a chance to play in Boston, you needed some help on the fourth line, but kind of did you kind of feel like I know you've been a scorer for a lot of your previous junior career, but you kind of identify what kind of way would be successful for you at this level?
Yeah, I mean, when I signed to, like, I remember Sween, like, that was the biggest thing. He's like, we're going to bring you up and call you up, and we don't want you to change a single thing about your game. Like, you might not score as much or create quite as much as you do in the American League, but we don't want you to change the way you play. Like, I feel like the way I play now is kind of the way I've always played. Obviously, in the American League, you get a little bit more time and space sometimes, or opportunity on, like, power plays and just playing more minutes to put up points. But I was just kind of told, like, just play the way you play. And I think, I can bring that to a line where I don't necessarily play as super flashy or anything, but I feel like I do what I'm supposed to do well, and, getting in on forechecks and trying to create pucks stalled up and, get into the net and stuff like that.
The playoff time is everybody's favorite time of year, and you got kind of thrown into it after coming back from an injury. Like, just what was the moment like? I mean, I guess first both series, I guess, but like especially Game 7. Like everybody talked about playing. This is a dream to play in Game 7 of a playoff series. Like, what were your emotions? Were you like nervous? Were you freaking out, or kind of how did that kind of come to play?
Yeah, that was crazy. I mean, especially for me growing up as a Canadian, like the Leafs were my favorite team, and I remember being like, oh, we always lose to the Bruins, and now I'm on the Bruins. And I had a bunch of buddies text me like the night before, like, we love you, but you can't do it to us again. Like, the Bruins can't do it to us again. But no, it was pretty cool. And honestly, I was pretty happy with the way I kind of handled it. Obviously, there was some nerves and stuff going into it. It was only my third playoff game at that point. Like, I came back for Game 5, I think it was, in the series, and then we obviously lost 2. But no, I was pretty happy with the way I handled it. Obviously, like I said, my first shift getting out was a little bit of nerves, but I thought I settled in pretty quick. I didn't have too many. There was obviously like good nerves, good emotions and stuff like that, but I don't think I ever let the moment kind of take over, and I don't think I was ever like worried about making any mistake or anything like that.
To get an assist on a tying goal in Game 7, it's got to be on the bucket list too,
Yeah, it was pretty cool. Honestly, I thought I scored it at first. I shot it and it landed on top of the net somehow and rolled off the back. But yeah, no, it's pretty cool to be able to say I had an assist in the game tying goal.
You hear a million stories about Brad Marchand, and people say like they hate to play against him but love to have him on their team. Like, what's something about Marchie that people don't know or that people should be surprised about?
Yeah, he's one of the best. Like, not only players I've ever played with, obviously he's got to be up there with the best, one of the best players, but off the ice too. Like, he was so good. When I got called up welcoming people, like he takes the time to get to know everybody and make sure everybody feels like they're a part of a group. He was really, really good to me. Since even like, I remember, cause I would always go there in the summers and train when I was on an American League contract. Like I would just go in and cause they'd let me work out with the Bruins stuff and all that. And even then, like he didn't matter who you were, he'd go up and introduce himself, make sure everybody felt welcome to the group. So yeah, he's a really special person. He's a great leader off the ice, and he's obviously a pretty special player.
And both of you guys were dealt at the deadline. It was on everybody's bingo card. I'm sure to have him traded too. But
yeah, crazy.
That day for you, I know it was like a whirlwind of travel. But did you kind of see a trade coming somewhere in terms of how the contract talks were going, and kind of like for your first time kind of going through that experience, like how do you feel? You handled it.
Yeah, no, I kind of had an idea. Like I didn't know if it was for sure going to happen or not. I was basically told it's kind of like 50-50, like we're looking around, which I expected just with the way the season was kind of going for us. And obviously, like you said, the contract coming up and stuff like that. I kind of had an idea of it, but yeah, no, definitely a crazy thing. Like it's something that I've never had to worry about because, when you're on an American League contract, like trade deadline doesn't really mean anything to you. Like, unless you're one of those guys who are kind of up and down, might get waived, so you get traded that way. But like, so I had never thought about this time of year that way. But yeah, no, obviously it took probably a couple of days when I first got traded to kind of get settled in. But it kind of has a very similar feel to me of last year, like getting called up at the same sort of time. Like I went up to the Bruins. I didn't really know any, like I knew a couple of the guys that were call ups and stuff like that, but I didn't really know any of the guys, and kind of trying to get fit in and stuff like that to the new team. So it had a similar feel to that.
Do you have a favorite like flower moment so far? Now that you've kind of been around him a little bit, and I'm sure you probably didn't know you think you play with them in your entire career.
Yeah, so. No, I never thought I'd ever play with them. It's obviously pretty cool. I'm trying to think of a moment. I think just like when you watch him in practice, like how much he loves to compete and like have fun. Like I didn't even stuff like in warm up, like when it sounds stupid, but like the starting goalie normally never does like the last puck thing in warm up, but like he just wants to be in there and make saves and stuff like that. So just how much he loves the game is pretty cool.
What's the vibe around this Wild team? Like, I would seem like every game is a playoff game now with how tight the standings are. Like, have you got a pretty good feel for like the culture, like just the feel of the room, and how, you think that could help the group down the stretch?
Yeah, it's been awesome. I think there's a lot of confidence in this group that, we're a good team. Like if anything goes wrong in a game to start or we get down 1 or 2, like I don't think there's any disbelief in the group just to keep kind of playing the same way that we know how to play, and we'll get the results. It's obviously a really special group that way. Great leaders, guys like Moose and stuff like that, Spurgey, they've been awesome. But yeah, no, I really like just the calmness of it. It reminds me a lot of last year when we were in the playoffs. Like we were up 3-1 against the Leafs, lost 2 in a row, and going into Game 7, like we never had it was like nothing went wrong. It was just we're gonna win this game. And it kind of like this group reminds me of that. Like it does not matter what happens, kind of how we start, good, bad, whatever. There's a good confidence to this group, and I'm excited to kind of keep going here. And obviously, I think it's a good thing at this time of year to make sure your games are meaningful, so that when you do eventually get in, you're kind of ready to go from game 1. You're not in that lull where you're not really playing for anything for a couple games.
So your first impression of Kirill Kaprizov? What's your first impression? Getting a chance to be on ice with him with some of these workout skates, which looks like he hasn't missed 3 months.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard basically a lot of guys say it looks like he's playing a video game out there, and it kind of seems like that. Like he's just out there. He just loves to be on the ice and play with the puck, and he's obviously a really special player, so it's fun to watch.
What's your golf game like?
It's not bad. I don't play as much as I would like, even though people probably say I play a lot. But no, I'm like a 1 handicap, so.
Huh.
Yeah,
not too shabby.
Yeah.
If I break 100, I'm happy. So like this is a little different thing with it.
Yeah.
Final question brought to you as always by our good friends at Waggle Golf. First, make sure you head over to getyourwaggleon.com. Throw in promo code SP10 to take 10% off your entire order.
If you had to pick 3 people, dead or alive, athlete, musician, family, anybody, fill out your dream golf foursome, who would be in your dream golf foursome, and extra credit if you can say what golf course you would play at?
I'd definitely pick Augusta National. The easiest answer there. I'm trying to think. Dream golf foursome. I think I'd have to say Tiger Woods. I mean, if you're a golf fan, how could you not say somebody like him? He would definitely be one of them. I'm trying to think. Do you know who Wesley Bryan is?
I've heard the name.
I watch a lot of like YouTube golf stuff, and he's kind of the guy, like he qualifies for a lot of PGA tournaments. I would say him, just watching him hit, he's unbelievable with his wedges. I'd probably say him, Tiger, and then I'd probably throw my dad in there. I'd like playing with golf with my dad.
So would you be him and your dad, you and your dad in the cart, or you split the golf and you want Tiger Woods in my cart and you could dag it?
Yeah, I might take Tiger for that one.
You've had plenty of rounds with your dad, I'm sure. So
yeah. I play a tournament with him every year. So, or I just started. We did it last year. We're gonna do it again this year.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thanks again for joining. Hope you had fun and good chance for Wild fans to get to know you a little bit down the stretch run. But thanks, Justin, and we'll catch you tomorrow.
Yeah, no worries. Thanks for having me.
No problem.
Great stuff there. I mean, God, like I said, it warms my heart when the Maple Leaf seeps in to Soda Pod and Fellowship of the Rink programming, and I really do think that he's starting to settle in well here with the team, despite the production maybe not being to the expectations of Minnesota Wild fans on this team that's faced a lot of injuries and him playing a bottom six role.
And I think he got a goal, right? And he got one more goal than Gustav Nyquist, right?
There you go.
Yeah, like it's just a weird situation at the deadline. I think he thought he'd be traded, didn't know it'd be the Wild, and that whirlwind trip to Vancouver to get there. And it's obviously a great personality, a really cool backstory, like a guy who was undrafted and then had to fight his way through the coast a couple times and then make it and have a Game 7 tying goal assist for Boston and jumping in the playoffs. So he's already had a lot of bucket list moments, and every team likes to have size and on their fourth line and a guy who can play in the net front, and so we'll see where he fits going forward. We'll see if when guys are healthy, if he's in the lineup or how they shuffle things around, but he's gonna get a strong look this year. And then they clearly thought they were going to move on from Lauko, right? And they had their feelings about what they thought Khusnutdinov could be. So they wanted something different, and he is a lot different than both of those two players. So whether he's right or wrong, and you could argue that the Wild had different needs, I think at the deadline, as far as maybe providing a little more of a scoring punch, for a team that like maybe lacked some of that with all the injuries that were going on. But all he's done has been a pro and worked hard and fit on that line and gotten better as it's kind of gone along. So we'll see what happens, how it shakes out. And but thanks to him for joining the show and a good conversation. Absolutely.
What do you got coming up in the Athletic this week, or anything you want to tease coming up leading up to the Frozen Four here?
Yeah, absolutely. Mike's had the road trip, obviously, in New York. He'll be doing a lot of the coverage there. I'll be on Zeev Watch. I'll have a Zeev story feature that runs early next week leading into the Frozen Four, and I'll be there, potentially in that kind of, embedded role like I did with BU last year and Minnesota the previous year. Get a feel for the DU program and Zeev's potentially final days in college before he goes pro. And then, we'll have a lot of Frozen Four stuff. We'll have a lot of Wild playoff preview stuff. Stuff with Kirill Kaprizov and him coming back. So we're just kind of getting things all put together. And so it's just a matter of how this week looks and how it shapes up, how important next week's games are or not. But yeah, a lot of things are in the hopper here. Just waiting to see what opportunity it is to pop in. I'm also going to Iowa soon to do some stuff on the prospect pool there, on the development program there, and hoping to catch up with Jesper as well, assume if he's healthy or not. Talk to him on the season he's had and going forward. So those are kind of all the plans as of right now.
No, that's awesome. And there have been some storylines down in Iowa, I feel like, that have gone under the radar. I mean, talk about a guy who's worked his tail off to move up as well as Matthew Sopp. I've really liked his just play all year in the coast and in the AHL. He was a guy who came into the OHL late and just kind of, was undrafted, worked his way up too. And I really like that signing by Hendricks this year. So I feel like that's one of, a few storylines that's kind of gone under the radar down there in what's seemingly a better season than last year. So you know where to find him, ladies and gentlemen. Joe, this has been fun shooting the breeze, talking about the puck with you.
I enjoyed this. You're much better than just a stand-in host for this. You should do it more often, I think. So we should switch a roo sometime and have Scott do the producing and stuff like that. And you can come and do some interviews too.
Well, there you go. Well, yeah, things are heating up here. Love this time of the year. College hockey playoffs, junior hockey playoffs up north, Stanley Cup playoffs just around the corner. So, Joe, Scott, they'll keep you guys updated. As always, check out the YouTube channel. I'll be doing a lot more watch parties for not only some of these big games down the stretch for the Minnesota Wild, but just NHL playoffs in general, with or without the Wild, but they'll be there. Don't you worry. So thank you guys so much for listening. As always, we appreciate you all tuning in this week. Signing off, I'm Misha Dromi. He has been Joe Smith. You stay classy, State of Hockey.